Takes me back to my college days. I don't know how many of you might remember this, but in the gospel where Jesus says, "Be alert." Back when I was in college, there were bumper stickers and there were posters that said, "Be alert. America needs more alerts." Hello, we on? Okay. This time, in the past, in many of my parishes, I would be, I don't know if I want to say a jerk, but I was definitely trying to get a point across in these first Sundays of the Advent season, first Sundays of the new church year. Oh, Happy New Year, by the way, everybody. But because I wanted my people to experience the season of Advent, the season of making ready, of anticipating the hopefulness that the season is meant to be about, to bring us to Christmas, I usually just really went after folks, not individually, but just our practice. I would discourage them from putting up their Christmas lights too early, putting up their Christmas tree too early, turning on the Christmas songs too early. Because I said it's almost like we can't wait. You know, as little kids, we had to wait for Santa to come. We wanted him to come sooner. We couldn't move things forward any faster, and it drove us crazy. And so it seemed that by the time we got to be adults, our attitude was, okay, I don't have to wait anymore. So I'm going to start celebrating Christmas right after Thanksgiving. And so by the time we got to December 25th, Christmas, when we were supposed to be entering into the Christmas season, most folks got to the 25th, gave a big sigh, and then said, okay, that's over. Next day, stores are empty, you don't hear the music anymore, blah, blah, blah. And so I wanted them to have an Advent season so that they could have a Christmas season. I think for the most part, I was swimming upstream, but I didn't stop trying. This year, I'm not sure I'm going to worry about that as much. It almost feels like these last, 9 or 10 months, they have been a time of Advent. And not necessarily in terms of joyful expectation, but more in terms of holding on. More in keeping with what the people of the Old Testament had to deal with, the ones that the prophets spoke to. Because you got to remember that the Jews, at one point, they were conquered by the Babylonians, and they were taken from their country, and they were forced to move to and live in Babylon. And they were taken away from the temple, and they were taken away from all the things that were familiar to them. And it was a period that lasted about 70 years. But during that time, that's where we find so much in the scripture, so much in the prophets, so much in so many of the Psalms that are speaking to we're waiting, we're hoping, how much longer? We are trying to be patient, O Lord. And I feel like in some ways that's what we have been doing, not for 70 years, but 7 or more months. And it has seemed interminable. So if we feel the need to start our Christmas trappings, our Christmas feeling a little bit early this year, that's okay. I don't see it as being the worst thing, the worst thing in the world. But I would encourage that possibly the things that you do to get ready for Christmas, many of which feel like chores, try and turn them into something more positive. Sorry. Time of wrapping presents. Don't let it just be this is a chore we've got to get done. Let it be something that can bring the family together in whatever way. Putting up the tree or the lights. Find ways to make that special. I heard a priest many years ago, and he said, the most important thing that a father can give his children is memories. And how many of us have, hopefully, positive, warm, joyful memories of Christmas when we were much younger, when we had that sense of anticipation and wonder. Maybe this year, find ways to notice the beauty of the colored lights again. The smells of the season. Let your heart sing out when you hear the carols that you love. And you don't have to love them all by any means. There are some really bad ones, but let your heart be free, and let your family, let your children learn to find this Advent/Christmas as a special time, a time where we affirmed who we are as a family, as a loving community, where we went out of our way to try and have fun, to do even the ordinary things in new and extraordinary ways. Story. One Christmas Eve, a prosperous businessman was hurrying to a butcher shop before closing time. Buying your Christmas turkey? A friend asked. No, hot dogs, he answered. Then he explained how, in the Depression, a bank failure suddenly wiped out his fortune. He faced Christmas with no money for gifts and less than $1 for food. He and his wife and small daughter said grace before dinner that year and then ate hot dogs. A whole kennel of them, in fact. His wife had given each Frankfurter toothpicks for legs and broom straws for tails and whiskers. Their child was enchanted, and her infectious delight spread merriment among them all. After dinner, they gave thanks again for the most loving and festive time they'd ever had. Now it's tradition, the man said. Hot dogs for Christmas, to remind us of that happy day when we realized that we still had one another and our God-given sense of humor. There is light that can shine in the darkness. There are still plenty of ways that our spirits can be lifted. How do we be alert? Be awake? Maybe it's by, in this season, to try and be mindful of what is there with us, and to try and find deeper meaning in so many of the things that we just kind of take for granted. If we make the effort, if we dedicate ourselves to not getting overwhelmed, if we remember that what it's about is not things, but people and relationships. In that story, it wasn't about hot dogs. It was about what it represented to that family. Something very special. This is by Father Ron Rolheiser, one of my favorites. So how can we be watchful and stay awake? By staying awake to what's ultimately important. By staying awake to the truth that God is with us, even when most everything in our lives and in our world belie that. By staying awake to the only things that will really matter when we say farewell to the world and our loved ones. Our love for each other, our faith in God, and a heart grateful enough to let go and forgive all the angers, bitterness, and frustrations we had in our lives. Advent invites us to be watchful and awake to what ultimately matters in life. And we can do that even inside our premature Christmas parties, or even in the midst of pandemic procedures and protocols. The light is there. It is shining in the darkness. God is with us and loving us. May this season reveal that light in very special ways.